So good evening, everyone. Today is going on. We have done 50, and for this today's session, our speaker is Dr. Tome sir, and the panelists are Dr. Junankar sir and Dr. Suneet Sood sir. Suneet sir will join us in some time. Till that time, I'd ask our panelist, Dr. Junankar sir, to introduce about the topic and our speaker, and then we can go ahead. We have 25 people online, and it's already 8:00 past 8 p.m. So without wasting any much time, I hand over the proceedings to Dr. Junankar sir.
Okay. Hello, good evening everybody. Good evening Tome sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, there is no need of formal introduction of Tome sir. We all know his special interest in gallbladder, pancreas and liver, and a lot of surgeries is doing since long. So today's topic is incidental gallbladder cancer, and broadly what I know is that what I encountered during my surgeries, I think there are two ways. One is that you operate the patient for a benign disease like a gallstone, and accidentally then you came to know on table itself that this is a malignancy or suspicious malignancy, and then you will have to further do whatever you want to do. And another scenario is that you remove the gallbladder, you are unaware that it's a malignancy, you send it for histopathology, and then report comes as a malignancy. So again, how to deal with this patient? So there are two categories broadly. This Tome sir will highlight us on all the aspects, how to deal with these patients and all these scenes which we encounter during the surgeries. So I will now hand over the mic to Tome sir for this incidental gallbladder cancer.
Thank you so much, Nilesh. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, every attendee. I thank ASN and VSA for giving me this opportunity to speak to you regarding incidental gallbladder cancer. So, gallbladder carcinoma is the fifth most common gastrointestinal carcinoma after stomach, colon, liver, and pancreas. But it is also the carcinoma which has the worst prognosis amongst all these five. Approximate five-year survival still remains in the range of 5 to 10% even today. The beauty of gallbladder carcinoma is that it remains localized for a long period. So even in advanced stages, there is a possibility of doing aggressive surgery. And with this aggressive surgery in gallbladder cancer, at least you can provide a substantially good palliation for these patients. Now in India, you see the incidence of gallbladder cancer is somewhere between 0.3 to 6.6% per 100,000 patients. In India, North India or northern states of India has a cancer incidence which is 10 times more than the southern part of India. And in India, you get cancer of gallbladder as most of our illnesses in India about 10 years earlier as compared to Western countries. This gallbladder cancer, when presented, about 3/5, that is about 60% patients come to us at an advanced stage. But today we are not going to talk about the general gallbladder carcinoma. The another aspect of gallbladder carcinoma is that gallbladder carcinoma in 70 to 80% of cases is associated with gallstone disease. Now, gallstone disease is pretty well common in India, and cholecystectomy, either open or laparoscopic, is being done very rampantly by all the surgeons. And as the incidence of cholecystectomy increases, the cancer of gallbladder incidence also increases. That is what found. But there are certain caveats in this. Gallbladder cancer, which is detected after the specimen has been sent to the pathologist for a presumed cholecystectomy, and the pathologist tells you that it contains gallbladder malignancy. That's an unpleasant shock for the patient as well as doctor. In India, actually, what happens many a times, you must have realized that many gallbladders are actually not sent for pathology examination. Many surgeons don't say. And because of early recovery after cholecystectomy, laparoscopic cholecystectomy, many a times surgeon as well as patient both forget to see the gallbladder report. But all those cases, wherever you see the report and you find that it has been, it has shown that apart from gallstone, chronic cholecystitis, there is a associated malignancy. This is a very unpleasant shock, and it opens up many issues as to how to treat them. So before we go into the details of how to treat incidental gallbladder cancer, I will go through certain terminologies. Now, gallbladder cancers, in literature you will find various terminologies. Of late, only gallbladder carcinoma has received a lot of attention in last 20 years in literature. And you have gallbladder cancer classified as obvious, suspected, unsuspected, incidental, and missed. So these are 5 varieties of gallbladder cancer. Okay. So obvious means what? Obvious means clinically obvious. There is a palpable lump. Patient has right upper quadrant pain. Patient has surgical obstructive jaundice, anorexia, weight loss. So these are clinically obvious, as well as sometimes you get a picture like this where you have a sonography showing a mass. So this is fairly obvious, or CT scan showing a mass in the lumen of gallbladder. Gallbladder cancers. The next is suspected. Now, what is suspected is this again. Ultrasonography report comes as a irregular focal thickening in the gallbladder wall, as you can see in this picture, or this is diffusely thickened gallbladder. This is not classic for carcinoma gallbladder. It is more like acute cholecystitis or xanthogranulomatous cholecystitis. But then you have another porcelain or calcification within the gallbladder wall, or you have a large sessile polyp. So these are the patients where you suspect that there could be a carcinoma in these patients. And then what is unsuspected? I will go again. Unsuspected is clinically or radiologically, ultrasound, you don't have any clue as to whether you are dealing with gallstone disease or carcinoma. And at laparoscopic cholecystectomy, you find dense adhesions of omentum with gallbladder or calotte triangle. You would think that this is likely that this could be a carcinoma there. Especially this may happen in patients where CBD stones were there, polydocholithiasis or polydocholithiasis has been taken care of, where gallbladder becomes shrunken and it becomes very difficult to differentiate. Also, there is a, when you open up the specimen and you find there is some nodule or some ulcer within the gallbladder. This is post-operative or on table when you open up. So this is unsuspected and you get this information on table. So these are the patients where one has to be extremely cautious about the diagnosis and further treatment on table. Then fourth variety or fourth nomenclature, as I said, is incidental. That is what we are going to talk today. Incidental carcinoma is the one where radiology has been negative. Clinically, it was negative. You do a simple cholecystectomy thinking that this is the gallstone disease. You send gallbladder to the pathologist and pathologist says the histology report comes as a tumor malignancy within the gallbladder. That's the incidental. It is variously called as inapparent gallbladder carcinoma, occult gallbladder carcinoma, subclinical gallbladder carcinoma. Like these are various names given in literature. And then fifth variant is a missed gallbladder cancer, where everything was normal. Clinically, it was only gallstone disease, ultrasonography, CT scan, X-ray. Intraoperatively also you don't feel and you just remove the gallbladder. Surgeon as well as patient forgets that there is anything wrong, and this patient comes to you after 6 months with a jaundice or with lump. So even routine histology in these patients sometimes has missed out pathological changes of cancer. So this variant would be labeled as a missed gallbladder cancer. Now the incidence, before I go into incidence, I want to take you through the terminologies, further terminologies which are there in literature. Now terminologies regarding surgery. for these this kind of patients for gallbladder malignancies are. So you call something like radical cholecystectomy and you call something like extended cholecystectomy. Now radical cholecystectomy and extended cholecystectomy are the terminologies which are synonymous and has been interchangeably used in literature, though they are not actually synonymous. What does radical means? If you have a mucosal cancer, a simple cholecystectomy sometimes can be radical for this patient. Whereas sometimes for a gallbladder carcinoma, you may require a major hepatic resection or hepatopancreaticoduodenectomy. So radical word means that the patient, the location of tumor is in the fundus, body or neck of tumor, and what is the local regional extent, that will decide the radicality. But the standard operation for gallbladder cancer, which are found in early stages, is called extended cholecystectomy. Extended cholecystectomy involves removal of gallbladder along with 2 centimeter non-anatomical wedge of liver and associated with lymphadenectomy in the for the gallbladder malignancy. Lymph nodes in the hepatoduodenal ligament and other, for which I will come in later on. Now these extended cholecystectomies are also divided into 3: primary, completion and anticipatory. When you have a preoperative diagnosis and you do an extended cholecystectomy, it's a primary extended cholecystectomy. When you have already done a laparoscopic cholecystectomy and you get a report of malignancy and then you decide to go in for re-resection, it is called completion extended cholecystectomy. And the third variant is very important, and now this is called anticipatory extended cholecystectomy. I will go into details of anticipatory extended cholecystectomy at this juncture, because what you get sometimes, that I showed you the picture of a diffusely thickened gallbladder wall. Now diffusely thickened gallbladder wall happens in chronic cholecystitis, happens with xanthoma, granulomatous cholecystitis, xanthomatous cholecystitis, and it also diffusely thickened gallbladder wall can sometimes happen with gallbladder carcinoma. Now this group of patient is most difficult to differentiate, and SGPGI people have come up with something called as Lucknow approach or anticipatory extended cholecystectomy. So whenever you have doubt about the thing being malignancy, what do? Is you do a open cholecystectomy, you do cholecystectomy along with 2 centimeter wedge resection of liver and send this tissue for frozen section or imprint cytology. If this shows positivity for malignancy, then you do remaining lymphadenectomy in this patient and you complete this. By doing so, what you have done is, in a suspected case of malignancy, you have not transgressed any tissue planes. So this is a new approach, and this is giving a good result in certain number of subgroup of patients. So this was regarding the terminologies. Further, coming to 4 further terminologies which are important from understanding point of view. Gallbladder walls, if you understand the histology of this wall, the mucosa is a thin epithelial layer, followed by there is a lamina propria. You can see on the right lower corner of this diagram, lamina propria, and then there is a muscularis propria or muscle layer, and then there is a perimuscular connective tissue, and then there is a serosa. The applied importance of this is serosa is lacking on the gallbladder bed side. So gallbladder carcinoma, which has gone beyond the perimuscular connective tissue, goes into the liver immediately. Serosa is only on anterior side. This is one importance. Second importance is, whenever you are doing a simple cholecystectomy, in T1A or T1B tumors, you are likely to transgress the plane. So there is a violation of plane when you remove the gallbladder from the liver bed. So T1A is a tumor localized to the mucosa, and T1B is a tumor which is going into the muscle layer. Now what is this T2 tumor? T2 tumor is the one where the tumor has gone into the perimuscular connective tissue up to subserosal connective tissue. T2 tumor. And this is lymphatic drainage of gallbladder. You know, there are multiple nodes in gallbladder: cystic duct lymph node, And these lymph nodes, as per Japanese classification, they are labeled as 12 and 13, like that. So you have a pericholedochal lymph node, you have hilar nodes, then you have a periportal node, then you have superior pancreaticoduodenal nodes, proper hepatic artery, common hepatic artery, and then celiac artery node. These celiac artery node, superior mesenteric node, retropancreatic nodes are counted as actually N2 nodes, and aortocaval nodes, they are N2 nodes. Whenever these nodes are positive, they are supposed to be a distant metastasis, and this patient don't do well when you remove N2 nodes. So if N2 nodes are positive, radical resections are kind of contraindicated. And then this is another anatomical fact which is very important when you are doing a gallbladder surgery, radical gallbladder surgery. You must understand this, as this diagram shows, the right portal pedicle is very close to the gallbladder neck. The distance is hardly 5 millimeter, and sometimes it is just 1.6 millimeter. So a tumor which is localized to the gallbladder neck, when you are trying to remove this tumor, you are likely to injure this right portal pedicle. So simple non-anatomical wedge resection may not be possible in gallbladder neck tumors, and you need to go ahead with more major hepatic resections in these patients. Now coming to this staging, as we discussed just now. So staging of gallbladder cancer is from T1 to T4, depending on the depth of invasion of the primary tumor, and nodes I already told you, and metastasis, distant metastasis occur mostly in liver, lung, brain. These are the areas where now with laparoscopic cholecystectomy, involvement of port site is also considered as a distant metastasis in some series. The beauty of gallbladder cancer is from stage 1 to stage 4B, this disease is localized. That is, it is localized to either gallbladder and to the nodes. And M1 comes in only stage 4B cases. Stage 4A till stage 4A, it is a loco-regional disease, and stage 4B is a distant spread. So there is a great opportunity to do aggressive surgery in this patient till stage 4A. Okay. Now going back to the incidence of gallbladder cancer, incidental. Now we are going to concentrate on incidental or inapparent or post-operatively detected gallbladder cancer. So the incidence of such occurrence is between 0.5 to 2.1 cases. On an average, it is 1% of cases. Now imagine we don't have data, exact data, how many cholecystectomies are being done in India. But in American United States data says, they say 5 lakh cholecystectomies are done there. And average, if you take 1%, it turns out to be 5,000 early gallbladder cancers, T1, T2 cancers in that. In India also, imagine we might be missing so many. We ourselves, our pathologists are not trained to detect early malignancy. That is a fact. Now there are certain group of patients where the incidence is higher, especially in elderly patients, sometimes with presentation with empyema and acute cholecystitis, Mirizi syndrome, porcelain gallbladder, single large sessile polyp. So one has to be very careful in these patients. The incidence of chances of you getting a positive report for malignancy are higher in these patients. Now coming to why we should offer a re-resection to these patients. Once you get a diagnosis that this is malignancy, why we should offer re-resection. So what is the rationale for treating these patients? Why we should offer re-resection, when we should offer, what kind of procedure we should carry out. So these are the things which we are going to discuss today. Now, as I showed you in the diagram, there is a violation of tumor-bearing tissue planes in most of these patients. Overall, if you look at the re-resection series, you find that residual disease has been found in almost 75% of cases. So violation of tumor bearing tissue planes occur at gallbladder side. If tumor is very close to the neck of gallbladder, the cystic duct cut margin can be positive if you are not taken care of. And if you are, obviously you are not aware, so you take care of. Cystic lymph node is likely to be positive. So there is a lot of violation of tumor bearing tissue and residual tissue. As per T stage, if you look into residual tissues, if there is a T1 disease, the liver has no recurrence, but lymph nodes still in T1, mucosal disease also, you can get lymph node positivity in almost 12% of patients. And mostly this happens with T1B. T1A, you have a recurrence of almost 1% or 2% like that. So in T2, obviously the depth of penetration has increased, and in liver you get residual disease in 10% of patients and lymph node in 30%. And further T3, the incidence varies further to 36% and 45%. This has come from various studies. Now look at cystic duct lymph node. Cystic duct lymph node, we normally do not remove this lymph node along with a gallbladder in simple cholecystectomy done for presumed gallstone disease. Cystic duct lymph node is likely to be positive. Likely, it is not a sentinel node. In gallbladder cancer, it happens that sometimes metastasis jump into pericholedochal lymph node and not cystic duct. So it is not a sentinel node. But if it is available and if it is positive, sometimes it does happen that lymph node shows metastatic cells and the primary gallbladder may not show any sign anywhere. So this happens because it might be a very small mucosal cancer and lymph node become positive. So getting lymph node into the specimen is very important. Lymph node information about this lymph node is not always available when patient with carcinoma comes to the center. Now cystic duct margin, as I said, tumor near neck, cystic duct margin can become positive. And in such patient, common bile duct might harbor microscopic residual disease. So these are the patients who may require bile duct resection or reassessment of ligated cystic duct again. And then laparoscopic cholecystectomy is a unique one, very simple operation, very popular nowadays. And everybody tries to do all gallbladder cases via laparoscopy only. But we all know that during laparoscopic cholecystectomy, gallbladder perforation do occur, bile spillage occur, and port site dissemination has been reported. So spillage, bile spillage, perforation lead to port site dissemination, and this has been proven and found in many series. Usually these patients, they come to further, once the report is positive for malignancy, the index surgeon might not operate if he is not expert in doing the further radical surgery. So these patients are usually referred to higher centers, and there is usually a delay in referral. And depending on that delay, further prognosis of that patient will lie. And there is many of the times the information is not provided completely to the operating surgeon. Like the whole set of information which is required, I will come to it afterwards. Now, and then from all this, you can imagine that 70 completion extended cholecystectomy might be required in almost 45 to 55% of patients. So there is a huge number of patients after cholecystectomy who may require this kind of operation. This kind of operation provides opportunity for complete staging, and obviously with many series, it has shown there is a good survival benefit after such operation. Now, when should you do this operation? All surgeons would like to do this operation as soon as possible. But in real world, this doesn't happen. Many patients don't know actually that they have this malignancy. They come very late. One study, which is a small study, which has shown that index cholecystectomy followed by completion cholecystectomy in this interval, when this interval was 2.2 months, the median survival of these patients was 46 months. Whereas when this interval was higher, that is 11 months, many of these, despite completion extended cholecystectomy, all deaths occurred within 25 months. So obviously there is the importance of understanding of the cholecystectomy, index cholecystectomy to radical treatment interval should be as minimum as possible. Now, how do you work up these patients? The aim of workup would obviously, because patient would come to you at any point of time. It may be it may be after 1 month, it may be after 2 months, 8 months, 11 months, 1 year, like that. So depending on that, you will decide. Your aim would be to look for any distant spread, because any distant spread in this patient would mean that they are not fit for any further radical treatment. So you need to know the details. Whenever such patients are referred to you, you need to know the details of index simple cholecystectomy. Now these details would be like tumor details, complete TNM stages, what stage, what nodes, any metastasis seen intraoperatively, then what histological differentiation of these tumors, poor differentiated, moderately well differentiated, like that. Then type of tumor, there are n number of type, 80% or 90% are adenocarcinomas, but then there are few other carcinomas also. So type of tumor, and in laparoscopy you need to know whether there was any gallbladder perforation, whether there are any bile spill, what kind of pathology was it, acute cholecystitis, empyema, and uh, what port has been used for extraction of gallbladder. All this information you need to find out from the referring surgeon. Moreover, histological details, paraffin blocks or slides should be available, and these slides need to be re-evaluated by your pathology colleague. Cystic duct lymph node, cystic duct margin, these all details must be there before you design the operation. Such patients should be examined in clinically examined in details, like look for hepatomegaly, nodular liver, any GB mass, any verrucous lymph node, any deposits in pelvic pouch, ascites, all clinical details should be looked for. Obviously, then further sequence of investigation would be sonography, CT scan, and this would be done to look for loco-regional details as well as any spread. As far as PET scan is concerned, PET scan, the role of PET scan is not yet completely evolved in these patients. PET scans, whenever in number of series, wherever it has been done, it has shown its inability to differentiate between postoperative inflammation and residual tumor, and has helped in nearly 1/3 of patients. So getting a PET scan is obviously optional. But if CT scan is showing any celiac nodes or superior mesenteric node or retropancreatic node, and if they can be targeted for FNAC, that has to be done, so that if this is positive, this patient doesn't go for radical surgery. Then very important role of staging laparoscopy. In preoperatively diagnosed gallbladder cancer, there is a great role of staging laparoscopy. Though overall yield is low, we all know that the overall yield is low, but laparoscopy, because this operation, which radical operation, if there are small peritoneal deposits anywhere in the patient, this operation is not indicated, radical operation. Where you are likely to get staging laparoscopy positive is in patients who were T2 or T3. So depth of invasion has increased, so tumor has been there for a long time. If you have any positive margins reported from your preoperative information available, and if histology is poorly differentiated, most of the series show that there is a high yield in these patients. So staging laparoscopy is done before completion extended cholecystectomy. Now, what exactly do cholecystectomy is a 2 centimeter anatomical liver niche. Whenever you take out segment B, it is a bariatric section. And then, sorry, what has happened? Standard lymph node dissection, as I told you, cystic lymph node, pericholedochal lymph node, hilar lymph node, proper hepatic artery lymph node, periportal lymph node, posterior superior pancreaticoduodenal, and common hepatic artery. These lymph node must be encompassed in dissection. Now, whether bile duct should be resected in all patients, most of these patients you can manage without bile duct dissection. there are certain patients where bile duct has to be resected, and that happens when you have a tumor. You had a tumor in patient where it was close to the bile duct, close to the neck of gallbladder, or cystic duct margin has turned out to be positive, or bile duct hepatoduodenal ligament is so bulky and so fatty that you have to dissect it out along with the lymph nodes. And sometimes where there is a postoperative scarring and you cannot differentiate between scar tissue and tumor, that is the time when you would resort to bile duct resection. As far as port site excision is concerned, port site excision, there is a huge controversy. Port site metastasis has been reported in almost 0 to 40% of cases, and there is no unanimity regarding port site excision. Whether all ports should be excised, whether only the port where gallbladder was removed should be excised. Now, all this would depend on the information available. If there was bile spill, there was perforation of gallbladder, these are the patients where likelihood of port site metastasis is very high. But why there is no unanimity? Because there have been certain series where R0 resection has been done and still port site turned out to be positive. So people are saying that the port site excision, port site metastasis should be regarded as distant metastasis, and whenever port sites are positive, it means the disease has gone beyond your control. But having said all this, port site excision should be done, and should be done all 4 ports of cholecystectomy, right from skin to peritoneum, complete excision, so that you at least stage the disease properly. You know that there is excision, there is an advanced disease in this patient. So whenever you are doing completion extended cholecystectomy, this should be done. Now, the standard incision for this can be anything depending on the patient's habitus: midline or right subcostal extended to left, or midline with a right extension to lumbar region. That's the standard incision. And then whether you should remove gallbladder in completion extended cholecystectomy, obviously first thing you would do is mobilize the duodenum and hepatic flexure and go beyond this area and look for the lymph nodes. If there are any lymph nodes in that area, aortocaval lymph nodes or supramesenteric nodes, then you have to sample them, get an imprint cytology or frozen. If they are positive, you stop. If they are negative, you still continue. I know most of us are working in an area where we don't have frozen section. So mostly we would end up doing a completion cholecystectomy. We would take non-anatomical way of then do a standard lymphadenectomy. So this is how, when it is a primary extended, that is, you have a preoperative diagnosis, not in this patient. You score the liver, that is what has been shown. My marker is not working. Anyway, and then this is the specimen. Sorry, this is the specimen where you completely skeletonize the hepatoduodenal ligament, leaving behind the common bile duct and hepatic artery, which are shown being looped there, and portal vein, and a raw area of liver you can see. This is operative field, and this is after bile duct excision. You can see the portal vein lying there, and a bile duct is clamped there. And this is port site excision, complete excision from skin to peritoneum. This is how you should get a complete completion extended cholecystectomy specimen, where there is a wedge of liver and associated lymph nodes. And then you label the tissues very well in different port site, port head, etc. Now, obviously, before we go for this, I want to tell you there are variations when you are doing it for primary gallbladder cancer, not for incidental. When you are doing for primary gallbladder cancer and you find the disease is advanced, T3 and beyond. If there is a liver infiltration which is beyond 2 centimeters in the liver, obviously 2 centimeter and non-anatomical wedge is not sufficient, and you have to go ahead with a segment 4B and segment 5 and sometimes segment 6, or central hepatectomy as they call. If the gallbladder has invaded into one of the adjacent organ like duodenum. I'm talking about preoperatively diagnosed carcinoma gallbladder, not incidental carcinoma gallbladder. Then if it has involved colon, you do a segmental colectomy. If it is involved duodenum, sometimes you can do remove a disc of duodenum and manage with it, or sometimes just enteroduodenectomy and gallbladder and gastrojejunostomy. And if it is involving pancreatic head, then hepatopancreaticoduodenectomy, like this one figure which I am showing, one patient which I did some 5 years back, hepatopancreaticoduodenectomy, you can see. So these are various variations. Most of these things do not offer any great survival advantage, but they offer a great loco-regional control. Japanese have gone beyond and even reconstructed vascular elements like portal vein, hepatic artery, sometimes like that. So these are all variations and which may be required in gallbladder surgery to get a benefit of palliation in advanced cases. Not, they don't provide any survival advantage. And this is a specimen of hepatopancreaticoduodenectomy. Now this is the same algorithm which I already told you. And now how are the results of this? Overall results are of completion extended cholecystectomy are much better than simple cholecystectomy. So as you can see, when for T1 lesion, T1B, for T1A results, obviously you get a 80 to 90% 5-year survival with complete with simple cholecystectomy. So you don't do a completion extended cholecystectomy in this patient. In T1B, there is not a great consensus because there are certain series which show that in T1B you get a good result with simple cholecystectomy. But most of the authors and most of the investigators believe that in T1B, that is the tumor which has gone into perimuscular connective tissue, since you have violated the tissue plane, it is good idea to go ahead and provide a completion extended cholecystectomy. And as you can see in this, there are a few series which have shown a simple cholecystectomy 42% and extended cholecystectomy 79% 5-year survival. So there are some series, but there is no great consensus even today. As far as the greatest benefit which you get is in T2 cases. In T2 gallbladder cancer, simple cholecystectomy, you can see simple cholecystectomy 5-year survival with no re-resection is to the tune of 40%. And as you do resection, you get it to the tune of 90%. So all series you can get almost double the benefit. If you just leave the patient of T2 and don't do anything, most of these patients would die within 1 or 2 years. Whereas if you do their re-resection, majority of them are likely to survive for 5 years. So there is a great benefit in T2. As far as T3 is concerned, again there is controversy and you may not get great benefit in this patient. Now, where do you provide adjuvant therapy? Adjuvant therapy, as you know, even in primary gallbladder carcinoma, as a palliation or as adjuvant, it has not really shown great benefit. Of late, only few drugs are available like gemcitabine and chemotherapy and these are some benefit. So which patient should be referred? Patients with T2 or more, T3, T4, where margins were positive, node positive disease. These are the patients who are to be referred for adjuvant therapy. Similarly, patients with histological markers of aggressive behavior, like poor differentiation, these are the patients who are likely to recur, and therefore, obviously, laparoscopic cholecystectomy, those patients who had bile spillage, GB perforation, and then you do this kind of surgery, CEC, and your resection, though it is R1 or R2, that microscopic disease is present, these are the patients who would require. Similarly, as a best option, those patients, second best option, those patients who don't want to undertake completion extended cholecystectomy, they refuse reoperation or they are not fit for reoperation. These are the patients who would require some kind of support with chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and the results are better with addition of radiotherapy to chemotherapy in this case. Now, is there a difference between prognosis when considering open cholecystectomy versus laparoscopic cholecystectomy? Now, as a common parameter, as I told you, with laparoscopic cholecystectomy, a lot of other problems do occur, like bile spillage, gallbladder perforation, extraction site, whether bag was used or not. So overall recurrence is more with laparoscopic cholecystectomized patient and then gallbladder cancer and then completion extended cholecystectomy, as compared to patient who has had open cholecystectomy. But then again, this is an area where there is no consensus amongst the investigators. However, this tells us that whenever there is a suspicion of cancer, you should prefer open cholecystectomy instead of laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Though there are now reports of even performing completion extended cholecystectomy laparoscopically, but then this is a field which is not yet completely sorted out. So whenever expertise for laparoscopic expertise is not available, open cholecystectomy should be preferred by most of the surgeons whenever there is a high suspicion for high likelihood of cancer in a patient. Now, as far as follow-up, how do you follow up? There is no robust data on follow-up of these patients because there is no surgical treatment possible if there is recurrence. Chemotherapy, as we just noted, it is of not a great benefit in these patients. So follow-up should be only for self-referral of symptoms, and that should be good enough because there is nothing much more to be done after completion extended cholecystectomy or radical surgery of gallbladder. Now, very important, and my last slide, how do you prevent all this happening? There's a lot of enthusiasm for performing laparoscopic cholecystectomy. I know of surgeons who say I never convert, but then as of today, most of our surgical community and laparoscopic surgical community has looked up at laparoscopic cholecystectomy, and only the fear was bile duct injury. As far as bile duct injury is not happening, they are ready to do an operation for 3 hours, 4 hours, but remove it laparoscopically. They will not convert. So this kind of, now with this information of incidental carcinoma, I suppose there is a huge for converting and converting or deciding beforehand that this patient is good case for open cholecystectomy and not for laparoscopic cholecystectomy, and that decision is surgeon's own individual decision. Why? Because so many problems of gallbladder perforation, bile spillage, and then occurrence of metastasis even after doing radical surgery. So actually you vitiate the chance of a cure for the patient. If you had a patient who had a T2 carcinoma and during this cholecystectomy you perforated the gallbladder, bile spilled into the peritoneal cavity, you remove, you give wash and everything, you remove, and then somebody undertakes a completion extended cholecystectomy, but this is the patient who is likely to develop secondaries in peritoneum because there was bile spill. Similarly, so avoid gallbladder perforation and bile spillage at any cost. That is number one. Always include cystic lymph node because cystic lymph node provides a lot of information. So cystic lymph node should be included in the specimen. As far as possible, use specimen removal bags, which we don't do routinely. One should cut open all the specimen before closure of the patient or before sending patient out of operation theater. Cut open the specimen, look for yourself. If there is any doubt, think of conversion. This is one point where I want to emphasize. Many of the times we schedule our operation in such a way that we are in such a hurry that lap chole I will just finish within half an hour, 1 hour, and go and do another operation. So we aren't ready for such calamity. So always think that there could be incidental carcinoma and have some time. Prepare yourself. Tell the relatives that some things can sometimes turn out, especially if there is any doubt like thick walled gallbladder and all. You should tell these things in advance. Prepare yourself mentally so that time is available for completion extended cholecystectomy if required. So cut open the specimen and look for the pathologies. Frozen section whenever possible, imprint cytology whenever possible should be done, and decision for completion extended cholecystectomy should be taken then and there itself. Complete histology studies should be obtained. Now, there are papers in literature where it is said there is no need of doing gallbladder histology. But then overall cost of histology is much less as compared to the complete cost of missing one cancer. So I suppose all the gallbladders should be sent for histological examination. And as I said earlier also, consider open cholecystectomy for thick walled T2GB, thick walled gallbladder. Whenever you see any thick walled, extremely thick walled, it is beyond your routine experience of cholecystectomy, like acute cholecystitis, empyema. If you think there is a doubt, so doubt question should be raised in mind. This may be cancer. So consider open cholecystectomy instead of laparoscopic cholecystectomy in these patients. So this is overall regarding the incidental carcinoma gallbladder, which I suppose in an era of laparoscopic cholecystectomy has been very important for discussing out. Overall, if you look into literature, you will find that completion extended cholecystectomy is an operation which is underused. Even in USA and Western countries, almost 90% of times this kind of operation do not occur. So in India, obviously, people don't look at even histology report. So what about India? So, but we all learned surgeons must understand and keep this thing in mind, that this is an early carcinoma of gallbladder, and where you can provide a cure to these patients, and should have this thing in mind all the time. I thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tome sir. It was an excellent presentation. We appreciate and applaud you. You have used your entire clinical experience for enlightening us. Sir, I have one question. Hello?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
You mentioned avoid gallbladder perforation and spill in laparoscopic cholecystectomy. But as things stand, when there is a distended gallbladder, the dissection becomes easier if you decompress it by a puncturing it at the fundus, where you retract it towards the right shoulder. So that was one point. Second is, if there are adhesions near the callous triangle, then you try to stay lateral to the cystic lymph node rather than attempting to remove it. So that is one of my points. The third is regarding the histopathology thing. Sir, we are used to sending our histopathology samples to a regular pathologist, but I am of the opinion that a specialist GI pathologist or a pathologist who is experienced in reporting of gallbladder malignancies, just as we need an experienced thyroid pathologist, would be much more beneficial. And hence, I make a strong case for sending your histopathology sample to a specialist GI pathologist or experienced GI pathologist. This is what I want to add, sir. And overall, sir, you have contributed your experience of so many years to enlightening and enhancing our knowledge about incidental gallbladder carcinoma. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. As far as your gallbladder first comment is concerned, gallbladder decompression, which we all do. Now,
yes,
this is like thinking about these patients. Many of these patients, this may happen. This may happen, but if you are like puncturing the gallbladder, you should be careful that after puncture and evacuation of gallbladder, you don't allow spillage to happen. If spillage occurs, you clean it up as much as possible. Like, these are preventive measures. I'm not saying you don't do this. You try and do this, but then these are the factors which have been reported in literature for contribution of recurrence in this patient. So that is one. As far as triangle dissection is concerned, which we normally actually take away and cystic duct. Okay, but then individually you can pick up a cystic duct lymph node. As I said, cystic duct lymph node can provide histological information. So that was that is the something which you can do.
Yes,
what was your third point?
Regarding the histopathology, I want the histopathology to be sent not to the regular pathologist from where we get the biochemistry done, but to a specialist GI pathologist. That was my contention. I'm a strong contention. It's from my experience only.
I think you are right, and I tend to agree with you. I discussed a few days back with Dr. Girish Moge, and I asked him, how do you do pathology for these patients? He said, routinely we are taking 3 sections, fundus, body, and neck. We are washing away all the gallbladder, looking for any ulcer, looking for to be meticulous to look for these cancers. And very likely that they are also likely to miss these cancers.
Because and the third one important thing, like we have been taught in our post graduation that there should be a strong clinico-pathologic correlation with mentioning of the radiological or the imaging findings if there is a suspicion of carcinoma, and better still if there is a direct talk between the surgeon and the reporting pathologist.
Very true. Very true.
I have had one experience where the imaging was suggesting malignancy, but unfortunately the histopathology turned out to be benign, and subsequently the patient came to recurrence, and I had a lot of problem at that time. So this is one of the experience I share. Any similar experience, sir?
Recently, I would tell you, recently 6 months back, I did radical resection for almost T5, T4 tumor. This patient had been to one of the regional cancer hospital. Okay. And he had a classic presentation. He went to a regional cancer hospital where again it was reported that this is a benign thickening of the gallbladder. This patient was turned out by them that go to any general surgeon. This is not gallbladder cancer. Okay. Then he came, he went for another 2-3 places and finally came to me. I got a MRCP done. He had a palpable lump. I got a MRCP done. When MRCP people reported that this is likely to be a gallbladder with an abscess around it. Okay. And then finally, because there was a big lump and patient anorexic, cachectic, I thought this could be malignant. I offered him surgery, and at surgery, it was definitely malignancy. In fact, before getting ahead with surgery, he had a laparoscopy done elsewhere. In fact, he was taken up for laparoscopic cholecystectomy by a surgeon in Amravati. Okay. And because regional cancer hospital had referred him. So this surgeon then did a laparoscopy, and at laparoscopy he thought he cannot do it because it was like looking like a malignancy. And then this patient was referred to him. So that this happens. Then it was definitely a malignancy. It was a big tumor. It was not abscess. In fact, later on I discussed with MRI people also, and they also agreed we could not pick it up. So this does happen.
Sir, any experience regarding picking up of gallbladder malignancy in a patient who had come to you for some other abdominal pathology, like some ureteric colic or some other peptic ulcer, something? I mean, it was a documented pathology. The other pathology is documented on imaging or on endoscopy, but the patient also had a gallbladder malignancy, which was, I mean, asymptomatic totally. Any experience of this sort, sir?
1 or 2 patients I remember in last 25-30 years, they presented like this. Because gallbladder malignancy remain asymptomatic many a times. Many a time. Or there is a vague pain, it is not typical biliary pain. So vague right upper quadrant pain can continue. Patient may or may not seek medical help. So these patients say, if somebody has a gallbladder malignancy which is growing within gallbladder, and he also comes to you with a ureteric colic, your attention will be brought to go towards ureteric colic, and then your sonographer might say that there is a ureteric stone as well as there is a mass in the gallbladder. So this can happen. Yeah, this can happen. As I said at the beginning, gallbladder cancer remains localized for long period of time. In almost 60-70% of cases, it remains a loco-regional disease, and metastasis occur late. And this is the behavior of this gallbladder cancer, which prompts us to do aggressive surgery in these patients.
The one of the factors is that a patient residing in a North Indian state like Bihar people of that area are more prone to gallbladder malignancies. So if you have a patient from that area, again, we should carry a strong suspicion. And second, sir, what about following up of asymptomatic gallbladder polyps reported on ultrasound? Progressive, non-progressive, when do you intervene?
A polyp which is more than 1 centimeter. That has been reported. A chance of polyp reported as more than 1 centimeter in size. Yes. 1 centimeter in size, its likelihood that it will become a malignant. And that is where you can have prophylactic cholecystectomy.
Yes, so that's a very clear-cut indication for intervention. But for polyps at 2 millimeter or 3 millimeter, which are sometimes reported as non-moving calculi, but in fact, which are their polyps. So in those situations, sir, what are the current recommendations?
Just observation. 2-3 millimeter polyp, observation only. Observation if they are not symptomatic.
Serial ultrasounds.
If they are not symptomatic, just observation. Don't do anything. Maybe 6 monthly ultrasound or so if patients are concerned. Recently, I did a laparoscopic cholecystectomy for a patient who was worried that there is a 6 centimeter polyp and he had gallstone and he was worried so much. In fact, when we opened up the specimen, there was 2 millimeter small size polyp. In fact, very difficult for pathologists even to look at it.
Achha.
So ultrasound-wise, sometimes you can get a reporting like that. But then unless there are a lot of symptoms, unless patients are too concerned about it, you should not remove their gallbladders.
The case is open for discussion.
I remember, I will comment on one case. I remember one gynecologist from Ranchi. Okay. Her son was studying in Savangi Medical College along with Dr. Jay Deshmukh's son. And this lady had gallstones. She had no symptom whatsoever. She came to Nagpur, Savangi, and then she decided, I want cholecystectomy. So actually, that is one prophylactic cholecystectomy which I did. I told that madam, I said, you don't have any symptom. Why do you want to undertake a gallbladder? She said, I am from Bihar and we have a lot of incidents of gallbladder cancer. That is one. I said, madam, prophylactic cholecystectomy can endanger your problems. You may put up into problems. She said, I understand all that, but go ahead and do my cholecystectomy. So,
but
so that is
it was it was good because long-standing cholelithiasis, chronic cholecystitis are again predisposing factors.
So there is some case for prophylactic cholecystectomy in northern India.
Okay, for North Indian, origin.
Okay. There is a very high incidence as compared.
Yes, sir. Yes, yeah. Some pockets of Bihar and UP also.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience?
Nilesh sir, you have comment. Nilesh sir,
I want to make a quick comment. Thomas, it was a very good lecture, and you gave a very good take-home message that since after incidental gallbladder cancer you detect and you do a radical surgery also, there is no big survival benefit, you said. So basically nowadays there is a lot of fashion or prestige that you should complete cholecystectomy laparoscopically only for a benign disease, and people go to the extent of doing partial cholecystectomy, or they even remove piecemeal gallbladder if it is a thick walled gallbladder. So without bag, even piecemeal gallbladder is removed. So I think it's a good take-home message that since the results after radical surgery also results are not good, you should be very careful while doing laparoscopic cholecystectomy. You should not make it a prestige point that somehow I have to remove it by laparoscopy and I should not open. So that is a good point. And one comment I had to make that you said it's a 1% incidence of gallbladder malignancy incidental, though it's so high, but we usually get very less. But because I usually send to every gallbladder to the pathologist, and a good pathologist, I won't take a name, but I sent to good pathologists, and I came across only one patient in last 25 years who came to me as a incidental gallbladder malignancy after the removal in histopathology, because we don't have a frozen section. And to my surprise, I actually operated that patient for the gallbladder stones. There were multiple big gallbladder stones, and histopatho surprisingly came as a squamous cell carcinoma, primary squamous cell carcinoma, because of the metaplasia of the long-standing gallbladder stones. And it has been reported in literature that squamous cell carcinoma primary can occur in 3% of malignancies of gallbladder. It is though rare. But I got only one incidental carcinoma, and that too was a squamous cell carcinoma. So what do you recommend in these patients? Also, we should go for an extended radical surgery later on, or radiotherapy, or what?
It all depends on the T stage. As I said, if it's T1B or T2, T3, you should go ahead with completion extended cholecystectomy. Your first point, why the incident, even I am, this is all literature. You know, and literature on gallbladder carcinoma comes in India from SGPGI, Dr. Vinay Kumar Kapoor, VK Kapoor. Okay, lot of literature in the name of Dr. VK Kapoor. So most of the gallbladder malignancy, it's from northern belt. I was in Delhi and we used to see a lot of gallbladder cancer there. Literature is skewed because 1% incidence overall is mostly from that belt and not from our belt. And I tend to agree, even I have done so many cholecystectomies and not found so much cancer. In fact, in my 25 years of career as a surgical gastroenterologist, I have done only 3 completion cholecystectomies. Completion extended cholecystectomy in 3 patients. 3 patients. So the number is truly not very high, at least in our area of Nagpur.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sir, can I add to something now before going in for questions?
Please.
The thing is, as you said, sir, what I have found about carcinoma gallbladder during my residency at Asian, there is a big North and South Indian divide in the management of carcinoma gallbladder. The basic reason for that is, as you said, as we have found that the incidence of carcinoma gallbladder is far more in North as compared to South. So the surgeon in North India are far more aggressive in treating carcinoma gallbladder as compared to the surgeons in South. You won't believe in Asian, any carcinoma gallbladder with obstructive jaundice, we never operated these patients because our belief, or Dr. Pradeep, who is our guide, his belief was these are very poor prognostic tumors. On contrary, if you look at Anil Agrawal sir series from GB Pant, or as you said, VK Kapoor sir series from this, they are doing it aggressively. They are doing right extended hepatectomy for these patients, and they are saying that survival benefit is there. This is one thing which has made a significant difference in our like as you said that you go to the extent of doing hepatopancreatic or duodenectomy because your training is in North. That's why you are trained in that aggressive fashion for CA gallbladder. But whenever I see any CA gallbladder with jaundice, I simply reject that patient saying, no, it's a very aggressive tumor or it's a tumor which is that. So it comes into training somehow. One more thing that Sunit
one more thing I want to add at this point, Yogesh, is all advanced gallbladder carcinoma may not be associated with jaundice. Okay. So if the spread is occurring, if there is a big lump, spread is occurring toward hepatic flexure to the duodenum, they may not have jaundice. And these are the ones. But with jaundice, I also agree, many of these patients don't do well. But those with lots of lump only, they do well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What else you were adding?
Sir said that sometimes we do surgery or sometimes we evaluate for something else and incidentally we detect carcinoma gallbladder. So what I have seen in Delhi when we used to go for PG clinics and all, in Delhi, residents give differential diagnosis of carcinoma gallbladder for any abdominal pathology. They are so much into CA gallbladder as we are into abdominal cox that we give differential of TB for any abdominal pathology.
Very true.
The residents in Delhi give carcinoma gallbladder as a differential for any abdominal pathology, be it pain, be it lump, be it gastric outlet obstruction, jaundice. One of the differential in North, in Delhi or Lucknow, is a carcinoma gallbladder. One more thing which I found out that what we should have is the most important thing when we are dealing with gallbladder is a good sonologist. A sonologist which can give us exact details of gallbladder. Even after thick walled gallbladder, if the sonologist says that there is some mucosal discontinuity, if there is some mucosal discontinuity, if a sonologist can pick up that, then definitely it's a gallbladder malignancy, or it is a high likelihood that this patient might be having a gallbladder malignancy. just a single report from a sonologist that it's a gallbladder cholecystitis. It doesn't make sense. So our sonologist, we should ask our sonologist to look after the glucose leukocytogenicity of that gallbladder. I'm not saying that it will definitely give us plus or minus, but then in some selected cases, we may go for CT scan in these type of patients, where we may get an
the first person who should alarm is a sonologist.
Yes, that's what. And,
very important.
Yeah. So any suspected, as you said, thick-walled gallbladder, we should go for open. I would also add that if you have a suspicion and a thick-walled gallbladder, go for CT scan also of these patients. If you have gallbladder thick-walled, some liver haziness, or any lymph node, celiac lymph node, or anything like that, then even nowadays, GB1 people are doing endoscopic ultrasound and FNA of that celiac node to find out whether it's a metastatic disease or not. So these are the things. Other thing which sir said, spillage and suction. Like if we have a distended gallbladder, so we sometimes tend to puncture it. What I feel is if we are puncturing it, we should just give a small nick with a hook and use suction immediately rather than the spillage into complete abdomen. Suction should be done and that hole should be closed with a clip. I'm not saying that it will prevent dissemination, but then some sort of
you should take care. You should minimize as much as possible.
These are some points I wanted to add. Now we have question from Dr. Mukund Thakur sir. I'll unmute his mic. Mukund sir, go ahead with your question. Thakur sir, I have unmuted your mic. Thakur sir. Thakur sir, not there. Then we have questions from Kane sir. Kane sir, please go ahead.
Yeah, Yogesh, not a question actually, but a comment regarding sonography.
Yes, sir.
We need to sensitize our sonologists to do sonography, a particular test called ultrasonographic cholecystography, because that is the one way to pick up cholesterosis, which certainly is a pre-malignant condition in the porcelain gallbladder.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Thank you.
Hello.
Sir, we were not listening to you. Sir, there was some voice disturbance on your side. Dhananjay, sir.
Dhananjay.
It's to sensitize our sonologists to do a test called ultrasonographic cholecystography, taking dimensions on fasting gallbladder and a postprandial gallbladder, fatty meal gallbladder, because that is the only way one can pick cholesterosis as such, which is a pre-malignant condition. So in order to do a preventive workup, this probably would be helpful.
Sir, cholesterosis is not a pre-malignant condition, sir. No.
It's it's more
only
benign.
Yeah, porcelain gallbladder is definitely a pre-malignant condition. Cholesterosis is not a pre-malignant condition.
It's
so
benign. It's a benign. It's a cholesterol deposits within these sinuses.
So one point regarding ultrasonography. In such what I do is I send the patient to another sonologist who is blind to the first report, and I also instruct the patient not to utter a word to the second sonologist, and I then compare. But anyway, the point is well taken that any thickening of the gallbladder, as just Yogesh has mentioned, is a candidate for a CT scan for his and our safety also.
Yeah. See, xanthogranulomatous cholecystitis, xanthomatous cholecystitis, where the pathology is gallbladder gets uniformly inflamed and thickened because of bile entering into the mucosal layers. Okay, so this is some pathology, and these are associated with malignancy in almost 8 to 10% of cases.
Yeah.
And where these are the patients where even during open cholecystectomy, one ends up doing a subtotal cholecystectomy. So now the word is going, even in xanthomatous cholecystitis, you should do a complete cholecystectomy as much as possible, saving the bile duct injury. But then obviously, because the incidence gallbladder cancer is something which, if untreated properly or if not treated properly, very poor prognosis. It's a very aggressive cancer.
Sir, regarding the concept of subtotal cholecystectomy, it is suggested that the mucosa which is left behind is cauterized completely. So, I mean, does it eliminate the, or does it kill the tumor cells? I mean, that is the recommendation, that you cauterize the mucosa completely, if it's a subtotal cholecystectomy and a mucosa which is adherent to the gallbladder bed.
I don't think there is anybody has looked up into this. There is one paper from Dr. Robin Kaushik from Chandigarh. Robin Kaushik. Kaushik is a son of Dr. Senior Kaushik, SP Kaushik, and he has done one paper on outcome of gallbladder stump after subtotal cholecystectomy. I don't have much details about this, but then there is one paper in tropical gastroenterology. Apart from that, nobody has actually looked up into it, whether it is it prevents malignancy or not. Especially like cauterizing the mucosa, whether it prevents malignancy or not. Nobody has really looked up into it.
Sir, Sir, cauterization of mucosa which you are talking of, Sumit sir, is basically done for patients in whom there is a cirrhosis of liver and you are leaving the posterior wall of gallbladder over the GB bed because you cannot go into the liver bed. In these patients, when you are leaving the complete posterior wall as it is, that time cauterization is being advised, saying that whatever the absorbing mucosal surface is there, it will cauterize. But there are no reports about whether it will develop into malignancy or not. Other thing of subtotal cholecystectomy. Yeah. Other thing, the subtotal cholecystectomy which we do for chronic cholecystitis, sometimes if the collapse is not completely delineated, or sometimes for Mirizi we do subtotal cholecystectomy. In these patients we should not cauterize the mucosa because the bile duct is very much near to the cystic duct where we are doing subtotal. So there might be a chance of injuring the bile duct. You should not do anything. As we are not going down, that's why we are leaving the part of gallbladder. We should just close that stump with sutures or a catgut loop, whichever is available, and leave it as it is.
What is important is you should do a subtotal cholecystectomy, keep that stump open for a moment and remove everything from that stump. Remove all sludge, stones, and keep the size of stump as small as possible. As small as possible. It means without taking the suture onto the bile duct and while closing the stump.
Yeah. Sir, we have a question from Patle sir. Nirmal sir.
Yeah, Nirmal.
Nirmal sir, he's where he's gone. He was just raising his hand. Right now, I'm not seeing him. 1 minute. And the mic of Thakur sir. Okay. So Thakur sir, your mic is not getting unmuted. Nirmal sir is not there. So most of the questions are done right now, sir. We don't have anyone else who is raising his hand.
Okay.
We have Gopal sir. Gopal Gurjar sir, you are online? Yeah, he has raised his hand. Gopal sir, I have unmuted you. Go ahead, Gopal sir.
Yes. Sir, I'd like to congratulate Tome sir for a wonderful talk on radical cholecystectomy. I have one question, sir. Many a times the cholecystectomy which is being done is a difficult one, and there is conversion from a laparoscopy to an open approach.
Okay.
And then such a patient unfortunately has malignancy in the gallbladder. So what would be your approach? Would you wait for the scars to heal and then the patient be re-investigated, or would it be prudent to enter before this wound has healed? What should be the time for re-exploration?
Eminently after receiving. When do you come to know that the malignancy is there? On exploration at that point of time?
No, after histopathology. After histopathology report, maybe 7 days subsequent to a converted open cholecystectomy.
After laparoscopy and converted, converted to open cholecystectomy. It would. I would like to operate as soon as possible. That is first thing which I said. Especially if patient, depending on patient's condition, if patient was fit at the beginning, and which should be, unless somebody was like empyema of the gallbladder and he was in sepsis and you did a cholecystectomy. Okay, so that is one condition where patient is recovering from sepsis, so you won't like to go ahead that fast within 10-12 days. But otherwise, if it was a stable patient preoperatively, and you just went ahead with a difficult gallbladder, adhesions and all, And if you establish a diagnosis within 1 week or 2 weeks, I would like to go in instead of waiting for scars to heal.
Sir, what has been your experience like? If there is a conversion to an open laparotomy, would it be an advanced gallbladder invariably? Because I am of the opinion that if a lap chole has been done, the revision surgery is much simpler and much more organized and clean. And if there has been a conversion to open, it means that generally the disease is aggressive, not worth reattempting.
I have only experience of one patient, my own patient, where I did an open cholecystectomy for, and it was empyema gallbladder, but patient was not very bad, and I got the report within 10 days, and it was a surprise for me. I did a simple cholecystectomy, and on 8th or 10th day we had a report. So during same hospitalization, I did his completion extended cholecystectomy within next 5 days. And we got a good result. But then, as you said, this they are likely to be advanced. They are likely to be advanced.
Sir, my experience of one patient is that when patient had a chronic cholecystitis like picture, we did a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. The biopsy came out to be T2. When I went in, the colon which was stuck to GB bed, the duodenum which was stuck to GB bed after surgery. Like this was after 2 or 3 weeks.
Disturbance.
Sorry, sir. Hello. So
when did you go in?
Sir, I went in after 2 or 3 weeks. Within 2 to 3 weeks, as soon as the biopsy came up, I found the colon at the GB bed or the duodenum which was stuck to the GB bed. Even the cystic duct which was nearly got duct with CBD, it was lot of thickening was there. That thickening gave me a suspicion that probably this is a tumor. Like you cannot differentiate between desplomplasia and tumor sometimes. That was the thing. So I took a biopsy from that, just a small tissue from duodenum edge, small from colon. I even had a lymph nodes from aortocaval area, which I sampled up and sent for biopsy. So fortunately, the aortocaval lymph node came positive on biopsy. So it was an advanced disease in which I didn't go up for complete radical cholecystectomy. Just so what happens when we go in after this surgery, as Gopal sir said, if it's an open, then all the more this adhesions and desmoplastia may give us a confusion whether we are dealing with a tumor or we are dealing just with post-op adhesions. That's what I guess Gopal sir wanted to say. Am I right,
but
Gopal
then,
sir?
as I said, if you that will be fine. There will be adhesions, and after open surgery, laparoscopic surgery, adhesions will be less. But depending on preoperative the histopathology which you have, if you have a T2 disease, you will try and do. Since we don't get frozen section, we are limited there. But you try and do as much as possible, scar tissue and whatever. You try and remove.
Okay. Sir, Abhishek Bhagwat,
there is no upper limit of time when you should go in. This time period when you should go in is not clear in literature when you should go in.
Yeah.
If there are no distant spread, you should go in at 2 months or even at 10 months.
We have Abhishek Bhagwat from Akola. He will ask his question. Abhishek, go ahead.
Yeah.
Abhishek, please unmute your mic. Abhishek Bhagwat.
Hello.
Yeah, Abhishek.
Hello.
Sir, I have just 2 points to make. Sir, regarding that, you made a statement that every gallbladder which is thickened, having a thickened wall, should undergo a CT scan. So, in practice, do you think really it is feasible to put every patient who has got a thick gallbladder wall to be undergoing a CT scan, and does it is really fruitful or not? Second thing is, so this might not be related to this topic, but I had one patient who I was called in. He was being treated by a cardiologist for coronary artery disease. He was simultaneously diagnosed for diverticulitis, sigmoid diverticulitis, and he had a suspicious lesion in the gallbladder area. So I had kept a diagnosis of query CA-GB along with acute diverticulitis. The patient was lost to follow up, but then he later came to me after nearly 7 to 8 months with metastasis. I just want to ask, how would you like to proceed in this case, though this topic might not be related to the concerned presentation right now?
So, taking your second question first, as soon as sonography has raised a doubt of something fishy in the gallbladder, even if it is asymptomatic, Okay, even if it was asymptomatic. So you try and evaluate what is more likely, whether it is simple gallstone or whether there is a possibility of malignancy. If there is a possibility of malignancy, now how do you say from CT scan, ultrasound? Irregular focal thickening of gallbladder wall, some large sessile polyps, some porcelain gallbladder, age and all. And if you have a strong suspicion, you can consider going ahead with cholecystectomy in this patient.
Okay.
You can consider primary extended cholecystectomy in these patients, and depending on the intraoperative availability of frozen section and imprint cytology. As I said, the third approach taken up by Lucknow people is anticipatory extended cholecystectomy. In such patient, that approach can be taken where you anticipate that this could be malignancy. You go in, you remove a 2 centimeter non-anatomical wedge of gallbladder and send all this material to the pathologist for frozen section or imprint cytology. If the report comes as malignancy, you go ahead with residual lymphadenectomy. If report turns out to be negative, you just finish the operation. That is called anticipatory extended cholecystectomy. Then your first question, I tend to agree partly with you that you will have to take a call on an individual basis. Thick-walled gallbladder, doing a CT scan in all patients can be fruitless. I agree. But then you have to take a call depending on the patient's symptomatology.
Tome sir.
Thanks.
Tome sir. I want to add one thing about this CT scan affair. I think it's our mind block that why CT scan should be done. Ideally, it should be done, and I do a lot of CT scans in these acute cholecystitis or empyema patients, because even if you are not thinking about the malignancy, they give idea about the pancreatitis or pancreatic duct stones, and lot of adhesions or how the colon is stuck up over there. So you get a lot of information about this disease by doing a CT scan, which may sometimes be missed on sonography. Because of the gases and etc., maybe sometimes sonography doesn't give details about this disease. So it is better to go for a CT scan which costs just 5,000 to 6,000 rupees, and so you can do a lot good surgery after that if roadmap is there.
In acute cholecystitis and surgery, in this literature, this has not come up as a requirement. Okay. But then I tend to agree with you that you get a lot of information. And recently I had a patient who underwent CT scan for acute cholecystitis because he said he had another fellow in his family where a gallbladder cancer was missed by the doctor. And therefore he wanted. So reasons could be like this also.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, sir. I will add to it that any further imaging after sonography should be dictated by patient's clinical examination and abnormalities in LFT. If LFT is abnormal in a cholecystitis patient, like SGOT, SGPT is raised or alkaline phosphatase is raised, then further imaging should always be done. If
definitely. Sometimes you may have to go for MRCP also.
Further imaging. You can call it MRCP or you can call it a CT. Further imaging should be based on the not just that ultrasound is showing cholecystitis. I guess it should be based on all the things like whether there is a cross pericholecystic edema and all those things on ultrasound along with some liver function abnormalities. Then we should think of a CT scan. And as Abhishek was saying, for all thick-walled gallbladder CT, I said for thick-walled gallbladder with some suspicion on sonology, for sonologist has some suspicion, any like mucosal discontinuity or any liver thickening extending into liver or something like that, then always we should get a CT. That's what was my comment, Abhishek. Sir, we have one
overall comment is.
Sorry to interrupt. Regarding Dr. Abhishek's first question, it could have been a patient of Saint Strat, diverticulitis, gallstones, and maybe hiatus hernia also. So that is one possibility, and long-standing gallstones then developing into a malignancy. That is, one of the line of thinking for me.
Okay.
Yes.
Sir, we have one question from Thakur sir. He is not getting online, but he has sent it on WhatsApp. So his question is,
Okay.
as we do port site excision after laparoscopic cholecystectomy, if there is a malignancy, so for open cholecystectomy and there is an incidental carcinoma gallbladder, then should that scar be completely excised till peritoneum?
Normally, when you would go in, the chance, what happens is in open cholecystectomy, the chances of gallbladder perforation, spillage are less. Okay, now, this is presumption. It may happen also, but overall chances are less. If you compare chances between lap chole and open chole, chances are less. So with less chances of getting the overall abdominal skin with malignancy, skin incision. But then, as you know, even in colonic surgeries, scar metastases are known. Okay, all abdominal surgeries, wherever you do laparotomy, scar metastases are known. But then literature is not yet very clear on this issue. And most of the time, if it was open cholecystectomy, it would be like subcostal incision only. And finally, you would also, for completion extended cholecystectomy, you would go through the same incision. So mostly it would get excised. It can be excised, I suppose.
Okay.
And it would depend much more on the stage of the tumor, especially if you have an advanced stage tumor, T2 tumor, poorly differentiated tumor, margins were positive on the histology, then you should consider doing all these manuals.
Okay. Sir, so it's already past 9:30. I guess we should stop here. All the questions which are still unanswered, if they have, there is no more hand raising here. So if there is anyone who has a question to be asked, he can drop a message in our group WhatsApp.
Okay.
Thomas, reply to that
Yeah.
question there. Okay, sir. So
Right.
thank you very much, Thomas, sir, for your elaborate talk and a good discussion which we had today.
Yeah.
Would like to hear you some other time. I'd also thank our panelists, Nilesh sir and Sunit Sood sir. Nilesh sir, we have already checked your connection for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'll make you presenter one more time. You just check your slides once and then we'll switch off. The rest of the people, attendees, thank you very much for attending the session. We are closing off the session now. You can log off. You can log out from the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yogesh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. So Nilesh sir, you are a presenter now. Just start your screen. Share your
just
screen
test
to
on
us.
once. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Yogesh. I will also log off.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Yogesh, I will send it tomorrow. It's not complete. Meanwhile, I'll be online.
Yes,
I'll
sir,
be
yes.
just watching Junankar sir's presentation.
Yeah, yes, sir. Junankar sir, आपका screen share कीजिए sir.
Yes. Hey, Neil. Yes, Yogesh.
Yes, sir. Sir, आपके screen पे एक आया होगा. Yeah. Please share your screen.
On control panel, no one can see your screen. Yes.
Sir,
click to start screen sharing. Yeah, I started screen sharing.
Yeah, so it will be there in a second. It should be there. You have a control, but we are not seeing your screen, sir. Hello.
There is one icon. I have clicked it that regarding the screen sharing.
One second, sir. 1 second.
Yeah. Share my webcam.
Yeah, now see, sir. Share your screen now.
Show my screen. Now it's seen?
No, sir, we are not seeing it.
Share my webcam. I have to do share my webcam.
Yes.
Now I'm seen.
No, sir. No, we are not seeing you. Yeah. Now we got it. Your presentation.
Slides also you are getting?
Yes, slides. We are seeing your slides. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now start your slideshow. सर ये नीचे का आइकन है सर, इधर
नीचे का है,
राइट साइड में वो वॉल्यूम जो दिख रहा है ना, उसके बाजू में एक छोटा सा कप है, उसके इधर, हाँ वो या सो आई एम सीइंग योर प्रेजेंटेशन, आई एम सीइंग यू, यस सर, आई एम सीइंग योर प्रेजेंटेशन एंड आई कैन इवन लिसन टू यू। ये आगे के भी स्लाइड्स आ रहे हैं सर अच्छे से, ठीक है?
ओके
जब कल ये ऐसे ही करेंगे सर, ठीक है?
ठीक है,
तो मैं अभी चेंज कर रहा हूँ, या ओके,
यस ओके।
आदित्य
हाँ बोलिए
भाई, मैंने आई हैव मेड यू द प्रेजेंटर, या अभी तुम्हारे कंप्यूटर पे आया होगा शेयर योर स्क्रीन, हाँ ये तेरा स्क्रीन आ गया मेरे पास, राइट?
ओके,
तेरा आवाज आ रहा है अच्छे से, तेरा पीपीटी भी दिखना शुरू हो गया है, एक बार तेरा वेबकैम ऑन कर ले। आई एम नॉट सीइंग यू बट या या
ओके,
so this is how we are going to do it tomorrow, okay?
ठीक है, बिल्कुल।
so बस तेरे को कल तेरा जो टॉक है, तेरे लिए जो वेबिनार का डाला है हमने, तेरे को वो लिंक पे क्लिक करके ज्वाइन होना है, ठीक है?
ठीक है।
now only issue is tomorrow I have 2 cases, I may be late, so you can start it yourself or Adi Bansod sir will come and he will join you, okay?
चलेगा बिल्कुल,
राइट मैम, चलो ठीक है, या चल बाय, गुड नाइट,
गुड नाइट।